Welcome to the Raising Empowered Kids online video interview series. I'm here today with my special guest, Alison Armstrong. I am so excited to introduce you to her. She is just amazing. I just adore her. So Alison's exploration of human behavior began in 1991 with her decision to study men. And I quote, "To find out how I was bringing out the worst in them and hopefully how to bring out the best." Her success in understanding men naturally led to studying women's behavior and making vital connections between the two. Alison distinguishes human instinct that compel both men and women to behave in ways that contradict and undermine our own purposes, goals, values, needs, and relationships. She offers partnership-based alternatives, giving millions of people access to more fulfilling lives, loving relationships, stronger families, and more productive organizations. Alison is a highly sought-after speaker and thought leader amongst people with a desire to live empowered lives. Her philosophy and approach is frequently referenced and taught by other authors, speakers, business consultants, and therapists. Alison wasn't able to do a video interview with us today, so we have her here by telephone. Hi, Alison. I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm thrilled to be here.
So I know that you are a mom yourself, and you've had so much experience with relationships and communication and all this fun stuff. And I would really just love to pick your brain today on your thoughts around how we're raising kids and how we can raise empowered children. And yeah, so let's dive in. Where do we start?
Where do we start? Well, you probably don't know that empowerment is what we would call my third noble quality. Mm-hmm. So it is one of my highest values.
Yes.
And is at the heart of everything I've studied and designed. And, it literally means to enable, right? To enable to do, to enable to be, right? To give someone the power, mm-hmm. right? And I'm fascinated by that. And I'm fascinated. I always see the contrast, right? I have a friend who says, whatever you're committed to, you're going to spend a lifetime of seeing the opposite. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of the curse, right? So everywhere I look, I see disempowerment. And everything from a flinch or a cringe to my heart breaking, watching people be disempowered. And as you know, so much of my work is about men and women empowering themselves and each other instead of the opposite. And it is actually one of my greatest joys, how we've gotten to extend that to empowering young people and, including my three.
Empowerment is one of my highest values too. A lot of the work that I do around my women's work really revolves around empowering girls, empowering moms to have these important conversations with their kids. And I know that how we talk to each other plays a big role in, how, whether or not we feel empowered or disempowered. Can you talk a little bit about ways that we are talking to our kids or our partners that are not empowering and how we can shift that to, have people feel more empowered, feel more respected? And in the case of children, I know a lot of times there's motive behind what we're saying because we want them to do something. So how can we do that in a way that they're going to be agreeable and feel empowered and feel
yes,
we want to have happen?
Yes. Oh man. Okay, you put your foot right in it then.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So, okay, I'm going to give a little foundation before I answer your question directly. Okay. Since some people are not familiar with my work and my fascination with what I think of as the duality of human beings, as this combination of human instinct, which its sole purpose is to ensure our survival and the survival of anything we identify as ourselves, in other words, children, and versus human spirit, which is conscious, and there's choices that we make. And those choices are made from our real values, right? Not the values that instinct gives us, like the value of success and, pursue success, avoid failure, the value of status and being well thought of by other people, for example, the value of putting yourself in positions where you have power instead of where you experience being powerless. Those are all values of human instinct. Those are hardwired in, or what you might think of as factory installed, versus the kind of values that someone would consciously invent, like a value of courage or generosity or compassion or integrity or patience or love or empowerment or truth, or partnership or freedom, right? To mention a couple of mine. So one of the biggest battles of being a parent or a teacher or a caregiver for young people is that human instincts in this area they're like on jet fuel. Procreate is the number one in the hierarchy of human instinct. So it's procreate, then protect, then provide. So have children, protect the children, provide for the children, so that it circles back around and they can provide for us, right? That our lives depend upon them being successful. That's how it occurs instinctively. And our lives depend on them being successful at every age, not just how they turn out. And so we have agendas for them. We have this huge attachment and investment to them being successful in life. And one of the biggest ways that we disempower, I kind of avoid the word children because it's often objectifying, right? And that's one of the ways we disempower them. Our mission statement actually says men, women, and children, instead of just people. And they're like, why can't we just say people? I said, because children aren't granted people status. We actually have to call it out. If we say people, they won't be included. And that's one of the ways we disempower them, is by thinking that they're a thing and that they have certain qualities, and we have to shape them and make sure that they gain certain qualities so that they're successful. And we even, in many ways, our curiosity about them is not, we rarely stay in the present. In interacting with young people, we're comparing them to how they used to be and comparing them to how we think they should be, and we rarely interact with them as who they are right now. And I was observing this recently at a county fair, because these kids they're competing, right? And their parents have this huge investment to how the child does in the mutton racing contest. Just where a small child sits on a sheep, right? And try not to get bucked off, and they try to get to the other end. But it's as if when we observe a characteristic in a child now, we're judging how is that going to serve them in the future. And if we think it will serve them in the future, we actually say that, wow, you're really talented. You'd make a good fill in the blank, right? You'd make a good artist. You'd make a good lawyer. You'd make a good doctor, right? So we take who they are in the present and we project it into the future that we would want for them or see them. or, buddy, you better fix that or you're never going to amount to anything. Right? We're critical of a characteristic. Like, you watch videos all day, you play videos all day, you're never going to amount to anything. Maybe there's a good reason they play videos. Maybe if we had curiosity, what's important to you about that? You would find out that playing video is actually one of the best ways young men can develop themselves these days. It's the opposite of what we think, but you'd have to investigate. So we have to watch this thing of children not being people, and so we disempower them by disrespecting their peopleness, and we do to young people the same thing we do that disempowers men and women or emasculates men. So criticizing them, comparing them, which is, if a parent can resist out loud comparing one child to another, either their own children or a child to their best friend or a child to somebody else at school or a neighbor, if you can resist doing that out loud, that's a victory of human spirit. If you can catch yourself doing it in your head and letting it go, right, instead of investing in, I got to fix that, that's an enormous victory of human spirit. And so much of the time, children, they don't even feel seen. My parents don't know who I am. That's such a common statement. My parents have no idea who I am. And it has to do with that their parents are not actually present to who they are now. They're either comparing them to who they were last year, how they did last week, how their brother's doing, or comparing them to who they want to shape them into being in the future. And, ouch, that is so disempowering. So if we just exercised, who are they now? Who's this person now? Who's this person now? What are they up to now? What's important to them now? What do they care about now? Wonder why they care about that. I should ask. That's so interesting. Ooh, that's who they are now. If we brought curiosity to our children, much more than an agenda or this idea that it's our job to shape them and to we're going to instill something in them. Really? They're a bottle? If we brought curiosity rather than what instinct has us bring, which is an attempt to control, which is hilarious to me. It's such an illusion.
Yeah.
I finally realized that right about the time that I couldn't force my child's arm into a sweater and keep it on them, right? So it's about 2 years old. That after that point, illusion control was completely an illusion.
Right.
But yet we try to exercise it all the time, Robin.
Yes. So true.
And then we wonder why they rebel.
Right.
Well, so did we, and we still do. Anybody tries to control us, we rebel. Always have, always will.
Right.
Because it's insulting. It's disrespectful.
Yeah.
I giggled, by the way, if I could tell you one more thing.
Sure.
I giggled, by the way, when you said having them be agreeable, because we have a series that we've been working on, and next year we're going to offer a webinar course called Partnership in Young People. And one of the topics in our series has to do with being trustworthy, and that most adults are not trustworthy to young people. And it's a human thing. Most people are paying attention to, do they trust other people? They don't pay attention to, are they trustworthy? So parents are always worried, can they trust their children? But they don't know their children are convinced that their parents can't be trusted. And one of the reasons their parents can't be trusted is because of how often parents attempt to manipulate young people. And one of the topics in our series, Robin, is actually, has adults distinguish exactly how they manipulate young people.
Mm-hmm.
What's step one? And if that doesn't work, what's step two? And if that doesn't work, what's step three? And so on. And the participants in this series right now have done research and asked young people, can you tell when your mom is manipulating you? Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
How does she do it? And the young people actually will spell out exactly, we call it a shtick, which, is Yiddish for a comedy routine. Okay. And so they'll actually spell out their mothers and fathers and teachers and principals' manipulative routine. They can see it. They see it. It's so obvious to them.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you brought that up, because I was just, back east visiting my family, and, one of my little nieces, she's like 2.5, cute, smart, oh my gosh. And it's, this is their first child, and, she's running, to the chair or something, and mom's like, be careful, you're going to bounce off the wall. And I was like, there's a chair between her and the wall. It's like, that's just not a true statement, it's like, and I'm like, it's like this poor little girl, she's growing up with mom like, oh my God, don't do this, don't do that, and some of the things she's saying is like not exactly true. And I'm like, well, what's 2.5 years old, mom is saying things to you that aren't exactly true. And you can see, yeah. By now that there's a chair between you and the wall, and you're not going to bounce off the wall, So yeah, I think it's very interesting. That
and Mom, I'm not fragile. Why are you treating me like I'm fragile?
Yeah.
Right? That's not empowering me.
Oh.
We also, by the way, have asked kids, we've asked young people, how do you manipulate your parents?
Mm-hmm.
And they can tell you exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
And manipulation is part of being human, but it displaces partnership, it displaces love and respect and care, and it's the opposite of empowering. And we're not going to get rid of it, but if we can see it and if we can laugh about it, like, oh, cute shtick, you're doing your shtick. Well, could you just come out and tell me what you're looking for, and I'll do it if I can?
Right.
Oh.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's an important point, that it is hard to, create trust when you're trying to manipulate the kids to, get them to do what you want to do. And I certainly remember being a kid and, convincing my mom to do this or that, by any means necessary sometimes,
Yeah, exactly. A friend of mine once called parents a marketplace. And that kids are figuring out, what are they buying? What can I sell my parents? What are my parents buying?
Mm-hmm.
And they can quickly figure out what behavior causes their parents to behave in the way they want.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really going on, and we take it personally, like if they really love me, they wouldn't do that. Well, we're in this position of tremendous power, it seems like, to them. Mm-hmm. They don't know how much power they have over us. They don't know how attached we are to how they turn out and how much they make us look good or look bad until they figure it out, which is called being a teenager. That's when they figure it out. That's what makes it a lot harder, a lot more interesting in my view. But yeah, teenagers are the way I think they should be the hypocrisy police. We should just empower them with, your job is to call BS.
Right.
When your parents are not practicing what they preach. And by the way, in case anybody's starting to think this, I am all for boundaries. I'm all for boundaries, but I'm all for them being clear. I'm all for them being rational. And I never threatened my kids. Once I embarked on this path, I never threatened my kids. I just made promises and kept them, including what the consequences would be.
Sure.
And the other thing I did was gosh, I wish people could do this. So this goes back to the values that you choose and the ones that you're going to invest in. Some people would call it pick your battles, but the values you're going to invest in, invest wholeheartedly. And one of mine is respect. And to me, respect includes kindness, and respect includes not being mean, right? And and my older daughter, she calls me the most ruthless person she knows. And I actually feel respected by her saying that, because when it was one of the things I was committed to, right? Integrity, respect, kindness, I did whatever it took to enforce that boundary. And I was, some people might say that I was mean. I wasn't mean. I was effective. So one time, my older daughter was being really mean to her little sister, 2.5 years younger. And this is like probably 11 or 12 and 8. It was whatever point we got Claire a phone, so we could keep track of her, right? So we could find her. It wasn't for her, it was for us. Yeah. And she was being really mean to her sister. And I'm like, you're being mean to your sister. Stop it. And she's like, well, no. I'm like, okay, you're going to be grounded for 1 day. 2 days. 3 days. Okay, I'm taking your phone. 4 days. 5. And I escalated very quickly, because I was not going to be swayed. I was there. I witnessed it. We're on a car trip. No, I don't care your reason. You don't get to be that way. You can deal with it other ways, but you can't deal with it that way. And I just kept escalating until she just gave. And she gave when she saw that I would not stop, that this was not negotiable, that this boundary was absolute, and I would take everything from her that she cared about. Mm-hmm. Now, with Claire, it was her phone and her communication and her freedom to go be with her friends. You know, when the younger one was young, it was dessert. All you had to take was dessert.
No cookies for you.
Exactly. All right. You're not going to have any dessert. What? That doesn't work anymore. But you can't do it for everything. If every behavior that you don't think is going to have them be ultimately successful in life, you come down on their head about, then you become untrustworthy. You become irrational. They think you're ridiculous, and they're just going to go underground. They're fight, flight, or freeze. And avoidance is a really good way to deal with parents.
A lot of kids do. I know I sure did. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier than fighting with them and getting grounded.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's easier not to share and that kind of thing. So how can you get teenagers to share when they're kind of shut down, or you're in the space where you're getting, like 1-word answers, things like that?
Well, as my son, in his inimitable fashion, articulated it as we concluded the conversation about drugs when he was, I think, 16 years old, he said, you gave up punishment in favor of communication. Mm-hmm. And that was true. I mean, I had consequences for my kids, but I stopped punishing them when they were probably, I don't know, probably by the time they were 10 years old. Mm-hmm. I just had boundaries. And the consequence was related, it was congruent with the boundary. It wasn't a punishment. You did this over here, so you're going to suffer over there. It was always related. And and this has to do with the illusion of control. So we think that our instincts have us think that if you punish a behavior, the behavior will stop. Not necessarily. It usually will just have the behavior go underground. It'll have it be concealed. There's a reason for the behavior in the first place. We also think, I call it the club, we also think that approval, that our parents' approval is hugely meaningful to a young person. Mm-hmm. So we try to manipulate them and get them to do what we want them to do, that we think that will, have us look better and have them be more successful in life, and therefore we're going to have a better old age and all this stuff that's instinctive. We try to get them to be more of what we think will have them succeed by approving of anything they do in that direction. Mm-hmm. And we think we can actually stop them from doing things we don't like by disapproving and by making our disapproval more and more clear. We think we can do that. And this is one of the things that gets rebelled against, or it goes underground, or the person who does cave to that disapproval, that's actually a child to worry about. That child's sense of self is that weak that they cave to disapproval. A child who stands up to disapproval, that's actually encouraging. That's an empowered kid, which is why most people don't want empowered kids. But most people really don't want to raise empowered kids. They are a pain in the butt. They have opinions. They express themselves. They stand up to you. They're not manipulatable. Empowered kids are not easy kids to be with. You got to be prepared to interact in a very real way, and most of us aren't. And so, one of the things I've talked to parents about over the years is trying to control your child's actions and choices with approval and disapproval. All it's going to do is cost you your only chance. And this is one of the hardest things for people to hear, that your only chance with your children is if you can have influence. You cannot control them. The best you're ever going to get is influence. Mm-hmm. And the only way you're going to have influence is if you preserve communication. And the only way you can preserve communication is by being safe to talk to. Mm-hmm. That's the only way. That's how do you get kids to talk? You cannot get kids to talk. Stop doing what gets kids to stop talking. And that's not being safe to talk to. That's being critical, judgmental. That's taking something that they said in the past and bringing it back around to manipulate them. It's punishing them. I don't know how she made this up. I used to ask her, so how did you decide that 2 years was the statute of limitations? And she just would shrug. But one of my daughters, 2 years after she did something bad, she would tell us.
Okay.
Exactly 2 years later, she would tell us something that she'd done. It was so funny. Uh-huh. And we were just like, wow, thanks for telling me. That's interesting. Glad you lived through it.
Right.
Whew. And so it kept communication open. Even if it was delayed, it kept it open. And that's the thing. Anywhere we're trying to control them, like you're going to do as I say, that's going to shut down communication. They won't tell you the things they're doing that are not as you say. Right. It doesn't mean they don't do them.
Sure. Yeah. Things we don't tell our parents, that's kind of, I think, how most of us grew up. And so creating, like, that was our role models. And so creating a environment where our kids feel safe enough to come to us with anything, I think, is the real challenge.
Oh, yeah. When you say role model, anytime a dad or mom says, don't tell your mom, don't tell your dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll let you, but don't tell your dad. Oh, okay, so that's how marriages work. You lie to each other. I mean, Greg and I were the opposite. One of our kids would say, okay, I want to tell you something, but don't tell dad. And I'd say, if it involves your safety, I have to tell your dad.
Yep.
I have to. If it doesn't, if it's like a private girl thing, he doesn't want to know. So that's okay. But if it involves your safety, he's going to know. No, it doesn't. And then they tell me this, like, just the cutest girly thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just special because they knew I would keep a confidence, but I wouldn't betray my husband. I wouldn't betray their dad,
Right.
whose number one job was their safety. I would not undermine his ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And can I tell you something I did that I have a relative who thought I was crazy?
Yes, please.
So if you're going to have empowered kids, I assert that the first thing we have to do, the most important thing we have to do, and if it's the only thing we do, it'll make the hugest difference, is to respect what we call in our work their space. So respect their space. So emotionally, for example, I never demanded that my children tell me things. I don't want to tell you that. Okay, if you ever do, I'm here. I respected their privacy, that they had a right to privacy. I know parents who think their children have no right to privacy. No, you're going to tell me everything. You're going to tell me now. Really? I respected their mental space. Could we talk about that? Not now. Okay, let me know when we can. I respected their physical space. And this started really young because I used to be an advocate for children. And I still am. I just used to do it in a more formal way. And I interacted with the Child Abuse Council. And the director of the Child Abuse Council educated me on a way that we make our children vulnerable to literally being molested. And how we make them vulnerable is we don't instill in them that their bodies are their own and their affection is their own to give, purely 100% of the time. And how we do that is we say things like, here, give me a hug. I don't want to. Well, give me one anyway. So we demand physical affection, or we trade. Mom, can I have a cookie? If you give me a hug, we actually teach them that's trading affection. That's a path on the way to prostitution, right? That we trade our affection, we trade our sexuality, we trade our bodies. And we actually set them on the path unwittingly and unintentionally, absolutely. But we don't even know we're doing it because we just want to hug our kid.
Right.
So when my kids were really little, I'd say, can I have a hug? And if they said no, I'd be like, okay. And I practiced. I do not get to take this personally. I do not get to be upset about it. I don't get to pout. I don't get it. It has to not cost them anything to say no to me.
Right.
And there was a time actually when one of my kids came to me and said, can I have a cookie? And I said, no, we're about to have dinner. I'll give you a hug. And I said, don't you ever. No, your hugs are yours and yours alone. Don't you ever trade them for anything. And anybody who tries to trade them for you run. Run and come tell me. They're your hugs. They're not for sale.
Right.
Oh. Because they'd seen this. They'd seen this at a friend's house, right? I'll give you a hug. Okay. And then they gave a hug and they got a cookie. Right. So that's like just their physical body. If you look at how we disempower young people is we actually violate the space of their physical body. Consistency. consistently. Like, you have to wear this, put this on, you're cold, you have to sit here, shut up, it's this time, go be here now, go do this now, go do that. We're like always telling them what to do with their bodies. And then the thing that when my relatives thought I was crazy is my children were not guests in my house. That was their room. This is your room. You have the right to close the door. You have the right to tell me, no, I can't come in. You have the right to say that. You have the right to ask me to leave something outside the door. I won't enter your room when you're not there without your permission and go spying on you. I won't do it. That was a hard thing to keep. I mean, oh my gosh, especially when I could hear them crying and I wanted to go to them so badly. Can I come in? No. To respect that, oh my gosh. And then the funny thing that happened that had my relative find out what I'd done is we were leaving on a trip to come visit that relative. I'll keep her confidentiality. And we're packing up to drive to Colorado. And I go to wake up my daughter's best friend. Okay, we're going to have to take you home soon. And there was a kitten. There was a kitten that my daughter had been keeping in her room for 2 weeks.
And you didn't know.
And I didn't know because I didn't violate that physical space. That was hers. So I didn't know she had a baby kitten. She had a kitten. Yeah. The kitten ended up going on a road trip. It was not convenient. That kitten actually lives with me. Her and her 2 children live with me to this day. But I was, thought to be ridiculous. How could you not know that? Well, I don't go in their rooms. Why don't you go in their rooms? Because it's their room. The only requirement I have, because their room is in my house, is don't keep food in your room that'll attract critters.
Right.
That's the only rule.
Yep.
But I mean, my Claire painted her carpet.
Carpet. Wow. Okay.
She painted her carpet. Okay. Interesting. That's like going to be crunchy, It's not going to feel good. Your painted carpet.
Right. Well, and I'm sure that's really hard too. Like, I don't know. When I was a kid, I was a major snoop. It's like I think it might be hard for some people, not to snoop, especially when you think maybe something is going on, like maybe there's drugs or who knows what kind of thing.
Yeah, it is. But are you their partner in their life, or are you the police? Are you a narc? Hey, you don't seem quite yourself these days. Are you experimenting with consciousness altering substances?
Yep.
But if they're like, yes, okay, you want to tell me about it? No. Okay, well, I'm not really excited about, that it's still illegal in my state, but I care more about your safety than anything else. So, it doesn't feel good, but I'd really rather you did it at home than someplace else, just so you stay safe. Something bad doesn't happen to you, that your opportunities in life aren't constrained.
Yep.
Okay, so you weren't being permissive, you weren't approving of it, you weren't not having concern about it, which kids interpret as you don't care.
Right.
But you also weren't trying to control something you can't control.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just, it's that kind of authenticity. And, oh, can we go to something else from there? Because we were talking about consequences, right? That, doing illegal things has consequences. Can I talk to you about how we try to protect our children from consequences and how it doesn't work?
Sure.
So one of the ways we disempower our children is we don't let them fail.
Yes, that's a big...
we don't let them fail. And so we especially don't let them fail when the consequences are the least. They're allowed to fail when they turn 18, and they're being held accountable themselves and they go to jail. But under our roof, we often won't let them fail, and it starts with homework. So we manage them doing their homework. Mm-hmm. And their teachers actually firmly believe it's our job to manage them doing homework.
Right.
But how does that empower someone to be responsible for their own life, their own obligations, their own benefits to getting something done, their own consequences to not? Like, if you won't let a kindergartner experience what happens when they don't do homework, what else aren't you going to let your kids experience the consequences of, and therefore never end up being responsible for?
Right.
And that was one of the first choices I had to make was, and the teachers were not happy. It's not my homework, it's their homework.
Right.
I'll support them in doing their homework, but I'm not going to manage them doing their homework. And another thing that happens, like in the classroom, and this is part of how we violate young people's time, is when they go to school, they're treated like the adults own their time.
Right.
You know, we tell you when to be here, we tell you when you can leave, and we own you in between. And so there's not an upside. So I'm gonna try to restrain myself because I get on a soapbox about how education disempowers young men, especially. Mm-hmm. But if a classroom, let me just model instead what would be amazing. Okay, class, what we're working on today is this. How you'll use this topic in your life, in your future, is if you're in this situation, you would do this. If you're in your best situation, you would do that. Yes, you'll be a test, but this is worth far beyond the test. It's worth learning. And how you win today is you read this chapter, you fill out this form that says what you learned from this chapter and ask some key questions to test you on were you actually paying attention. And when you're done with that and you hand it in and I check it, the rest of the time in the classroom is yours to do with as you please, as long as you don't disturb anybody else. Mm-hmm. So you can sleep, you can read, you can write notes to each other, but the time will be yours when you're done. Mm-hmm. What? Okay, I there's a point to this. There's a finite result I can produce, and then I get a benefit of that. Right? One of our students is a stepmom, and her stepdaughter's 6 years old, and there was this struggle for going to bed at night. And I finally said, well, what if you give her the choice so that it's all her time? Mm-hmm. So would you rather brush your teeth and get ready for bed, and then the whole rest of the time until the big hands on the the little hands on the 9 and big hands on the 12, or the clock says 9 o'clock, that's yours to do with what you like? Or would you rather do what you want to do until 8:30 and then you got to get ready for bed? Which do you want? And she was shocked by what the child chose. Mm-hmm. That the child, what she most wanted was the rest of the night to be her own. Mm-hmm. And, so she chose getting ready for bed immediately. Mm-hmm. And then she got to go read and be read to and do what she wanted to do. But we don't give people choices, and that's the essence of empowerment, is choice. Right.
That's so true. And the way that you put it that way too, it's like, I wanted to go get ready for bed right now too. It sounded better, It's like, oh, I can get it done, then I have all this time before it's bedtime. It just sounded so much better.
Yeah, and the most it is, and everybody's gonna have a different answer, mm-hmm. And that's the cool thing, is they get to do their answer. Well, I want to do this for a while, and then I'm going to brush my teeth, and then I'm going to do that. Okay. That's sure. The scariest thing that I did when my youngest was I think my youngest just turned 10, and my middle daughter was 12 and a half, and so my son would have been 17. And I had this realization one day that the public school that they went to bore a remarkable resemblance to a prison, both in the way that it looked and in the inordinate amount of time spent on paying attention to the location of every person. You know, so they had roll taken 7 times a day.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, waste of time. Out of every 50 minutes, 10 minutes was making sure that they could say, here. And I just got it. I got it that they were clear that education was their job. I had my job, theirs was their education. But why was I telling them how to do their job? So I went to them separately and said, okay, we're changing it up around here. And it's your life and it's your education and it's your choice how you want to get it done. So these are different possibilities I'm aware of, and we could investigate other possibilities. And I'd bought the Teenage Liberation Handbook, which is all about life schooling. And I knew about some other alternative things in our area. And there was our public school. And my middle daughter chose to do some really interesting things to get her education that resulted in her actually ending up in the junior college when she was 15 years old.
Wow.
By about 3 days. She tested out of high school and went to the community college. And my younger daughter, she doesn't remember saying this, but it's emblazoned in my brain. She said, Mom, I understand that public school is an inefficient way to get an education, but I want to be with my friends. And I said, okay, we'll support you. We'll make sure you have lunch and uniforms and what you need for your projects. We'll support you in doing that. And what happened, Robin, was she ended up being the valedictorian of her high school. And she ended up graduating from college summa cum laude. And when I spoke to a teacher of hers when she was a senior, and the teacher said, I wish every student here, if they were like your daughter, my job would be a pure joy.
Yeah.
And the thing that I wanted to say to him is what's different about my daughter is that every day she has come to school was because she chose to come to school.
Yep.
Everyone else here is compelled to be here. They're forced, they're manipulated, they're cajoled, they're punished. She chose every single day to go. And she was the one who came to the conclusion that it took less energy to go to school where she could do all her homework while sitting in the class because the teacher was so lame.
Right.
And she could come home from school with all her work done. And it was more effort to not go to school and have to make it up. And she actually graduated high school with 11 AP credits.
Wow.
That's crazy. I mean, that's just crazy to have passed that many tests. But it was all her choice. Right. It was all her pick. And then there was this other thing. You want to raise empowered kids? Okay, this is going to come back around to our original conversation. Are you ready for something wild?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, if you want to raise empowered kids, understanding that manipulation is part of being a human, actually teach them how to manipulate. And I did 2 things. One was I taught my kids how to manipulate me. I was like, okay, this is how you get the mom you need. So my children actually were really empowered. People used to say things to me like, how did your kids get so confident? Oh, I taught them how to manipulate me. They'd look at me like I was crazy. Yeah, because I just, like, they would say, can we? And I'd be like, I got to think about it. But can we? I say, I can give you a no immediately. But wait, yeses take time. But I could provide a no right now. Oh. So that taught them to ask a question and leave me space to think about it. And they finally figured out that I was thinking about how to give it to them. not how not to give it to them, how to give it to them if they just let me alone. And then we figured out that when I was really stressed, it was by accident. If they ran their fingers through my hair, it had this profound effect on me. So we ended up calling it getting the monsters out. And I actually wouldn't know I was stressed until I clued into that one of my children had their fingers stroking my hair, or they'd gotten a brush. That's when I'd realized I was stressed, because they were fixing me. That's a kind of manipulation in the best way. They knew what to do.
Right.
And there was another time when I was really stressed out and they wanted to go to the movies, and I was like, no way, I'm too tired. And then I'm driving along and I'm thinking about, well, maybe we could go to the movies. We could probably do that. And I look in the rearview mirror, and my son's sitting between his sisters with his finger over his mouth going, shh, shh. And then one time I woke up to these little voices whispering outside my door going, shh, if we let her sleep until it's a 7, she'll be patient. And I had taught them that, because that's what I most wanted to be for them, was patient. So I taught them what I needed in order to be patient was a certain amount of sleep. So my kids protected my sleep so they got the mom they wanted.
Yes. And that's also identifying what you need and being able to communicate that and in a way that your family can hear you and give you what you need so that you can be the mom they want. I love that.
And I taught them to do with their teachers. I said, look, the only point of good grades is it keeps all your opportunities open, all your options open. It's the only point to have good grades. So it's up to you if you get good grades or not. And then I taught them how to get good grades. Find out what your teacher wants and give it to them.
Yep.
And when my youngest, was graduating with all these honors and everything, people were like, oh my gosh, you're so smart. And I heard her say, I just figured out what my teachers wanted. That's all I did. I just figured it out and I gave it to them. Yeah. And she always is spending the least amount of energy to get the results she wanted, which she wanted straight A's, and she got them.
Yeah.
So there you have it. We started with don't manipulate, and then ended up with teach them how to manipulate. And how's that for a journey?
That is an amazing journey. Thank you so much, Alison. I love you and I adore you. And thank you so much for sharing everything with our listeners today. I really appreciate you.
You're really welcome. And, I think the proof is in the pudding. And part of the pudding for me, which has to do with that mean thing, that I would do anything to squash meanness, is that at this very moment, my 3 kids, 22, 25, and almost 30, are on a road trip together on the way here.
Wow. How fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of them flew from Texas to Arizona, and they're driving through Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's like 1,000 miles to get here.
Yes.
But they so love being with each other.
That's wonderful.
And it's because we killed that mean thing. We just wouldn't let them be mean. And we never compared them to each other. And they're so close to each other and enjoy each other so much. And they want to come be with their mom and dad.
Yes.
How cool is that?
I think that's, kind of the goal that, every parent has is, to raise up happy, successful, children and have everybody get along, have harmonious, family gatherings and that kind of thing. I think it's just so wonderful. It's like to not have to dread going home for the holidays. How wonderful is that?
Well, my daughter told me yesterday, because they'd been together for 3 days, she's like, Mom, we already got into it. We had a big blow up, but we were adults about it and we have it all resolved and we're glad it happened. Like, yes. So harmony is something that you keep chewing back up to it. It's not something to keep. Just in my experience. But that's another whole part of teaching my kids how to partner.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Robin. Thank you for the opportunity to express myself. as you can tell, passionate about this, and I don't get to talk about it much because everybody wants to know about their relationships, you know?
Yeah, well, and do you have any final words or anything else you would like to share that we didn't cover before we call it?
I would say everything that I just said applies to all relationships.
It does.
Give a man physical, mental, and emotional space. You'll get a much more communicative guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, my dear.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Bye.
So coming up tomorrow on our interview series, we have Jackie Latran, and we're going to be talking all about raising self-confident kids. And then you'll also be able to listen to Dr. Rosanna McAlpine on raising emotionally intelligent kids. And remember, if you aren't able to keep up with the 2 interviews a day and you want to make sure that you get all of the great information from these interviews, please upgrade and take advantage of the special gifts that our speakers have bonused in to the package, and you'll get to download the recordings, you'll get the videos and the audios, so you can listen to them however it works for you, wherever you want on your own devices. You'll get to download it to your computer. So you'll get the entire series. There's over 20 hours of amazing content, and I know that these interviews are going to help you raise an empowered child. So thanks again for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow.